For some of us this year, it may seem that the celebration of this holy day to commemorate the Declaration of the Báb has a particular tenor, a poignant intimacy that heightens our awareness, perhaps, of the potently mystical event that transpired some 176 years ago. Separated as we are due to the requirement for social distancing, and isolated as we therefore are, either in small family groups or alone, yet we are united as we turn our thoughts to the holy personage of the Báb. We are united in faith, a faith that was initiated this night 176 years ago. On this May night in 1844 in Shiraz, Persia, a conversation transpired, the like of which is without parallel. Two protagonists, an individual seeker, and a manifestation of God, were engaged in private conversation. The individual was a follower of a tradition, a prophetic tradition of Shia Islam. And he most remarkably met with a messenger of God, with a message that was destined to change the course of humanity. Religious history was irrevocably changed from that night onwards. The early 19th century was a time of great religious anticipation, a time of social upheaval, and a great desire for change. In Islam, within the Shia tradition, the followers of Sheikh Ahmad, known as the Sheikhis, believed that prophecies of the return of the Qa'im, or the 12th Imam, would be imminently fulfilled. Christians also felt that in the early 19th century and mid-19th century that the return of Christ was imminent, the fulfillment of prophecies from both the Old and the New Testament. So on this momentous night in Shiraz, these two personages met, and the destiny of our faith was launched. Sayyid Muhammad Ali was, through the lineage of both of his parents, descended from the Imam Hussein, and therefore from the Prophet himself. Mullah Hussein was a follower of the Sheikhi tradition, and in particular, the great teacher Sayyid Kazem. And you'll hear more about him and the encounter between these two individuals later in the program. But so portentous was that night, it should be mentioned that the exchange between the two figures marked the inception of a new religious dispensation, the Baha'i Faith, and also inaugurated the Baha'i era and the commencement of the Baha'i cycle. A mighty force was unleashed with the pronouncement by the Báb.
Oh, okay, that's good.
That he was a messenger of God, bringing new religious teachings, reaffirming and renewing those of the past, that he was ushering in the dawning of a new age of humanity, and a mighty force was unleashed, a creative energy, the very spirit that the Báb himself said vibrates in the innermost realities of all created things. The Báb rose meteor-like, as Shoghi Effendi said, above the horizon of Shiraz and traversed Persia, Iran, from south to north, igniting many individuals with a faith in his cause. It was like wildfire that spread throughout the country. The Báb and his message were a galvanizing catalyst for ever accelerating growth and change, for cumulative, ever advancing developments in arts, science, and technology. A mighty force was unleashed and continues to the present. And a testimony to that is the very method by which we're able to communicate tonight at a time of separation and distance. The Báb inaugurated a set of separate religious teachings with new laws and new writings and tablets and prayers. And he foretold and proclaimed the coming of one greater than himself, Bahá'u'lláh. His intense, short-lived ministry was fiery in character, and as I've said previously, characterized with its own writings, prayers, interpretations of previous religious writings. And we'll hear some of those prayers tonight. I'd like to mention some of the descriptions of the Báb. First of all, the Báb called himself the great announcement, the gate, the testimony of God, the mystic fame. He said, I am one of the sustaining pillars of the primal word of God. Also, I am the primal point from which have been generated all created things. I am the countenance of God, whose splendor can never be obscured, the light of God whose radiance can never fade. God graciously infused my soul with the conclusive evidences and weighty knowledge which characterize him who is the testimony of God. And latterly, toward the end of his ministry, I am the promised one. I am the one whose name you have for 1,000 years invoked, at whose mention you have risen, whose advent you have longed to witness, and the hour of whose revelation you have prayed God to hasten. Verily I say, it is incumbent upon the peoples of the East and the West to obey my word and to pledge allegiance to my person. The Báb also made most significant announcements. And in the first Vahid of the Surah of Joseph, revealed, the first part revealed on the night of his declaration, the Báb said, well is it with him who fixeth his gaze upon the order of Baha'u'lláh and rendereth thanks unto his Lord, for he will assuredly be made manifest. God hath indeed irrevocably ordained it in the bind. The Báb also said that he himself was but a ring upon the hand of him whom God shall make manifest. Baha'u'lláh called the Báb his best beloved, this cloud of divine mercy. In the Kitab-i Ikan, he said, no eye hath beheld such an outpouring of bounty, nor any ear heard such an outpouring of loving kindness. Separately, Baha'u'lláh said, his rank excelleth that of all the prophets and revelations, and his revelation transcendeth the comprehension and understanding of all chosen ones. Abdu'l-Baha described the Báb like the sun in Aries, the time of the vernal equinox, whereas Baha'u'lláh was the sun at its zenith in midsummer in Leo. Abdu'l-Baha called the Báb the exalted one, the morn of truth, the splendor of light, the splendor whose light shineth throughout all regions. He is also the harbinger of the most great light, the Abha luminary. His holiness, the exalted one, the Báb, is the manifestation of the unity and oneness of God and the forerunner of the ancient beauty. Finally, Shoghi Effendi spoke of the gentle, youthful, irresistible Báb, the matchless in meekness, imperturbable in serenity, magnetic in utterance, unrivaled in his dramatic, swift, and tragic ministry. And now the program will begin.
Okay. Send down thy blessings, O my God, upon the tree of the Bayan, upon its root and its branch, its boughs, its leaves, its fruits, and upon whatsoever it beareth or sheltereth. Cause this tree, then, to be made into a magnificent scroll, to be offered to the presence of him whom thou wilt make manifest on the day of judgment, that he may graciously allow the entire company of the followers of the Bayan to be restored to life, and that he may, through his bounty, inaugurate a new creation. Indeed, all are but paupers in the face of thy tender mercy, and lowly servants before the tokens of thy loving kindness. I beg of thee, by thy bounty, O my God, and by the outpourings of thy mercy and bestowals, O my Lord, and by the evidences of thy heavenly favors and grace, O my best beloved, to watch over him whom God shall make manifest, that no trace of despondency may ever touch him. The Báb.
Thy name is my healing, O my God, and thy remembrance of thee is my remedy. Nearness to thee is my hope, and love for thee is my companion. Thy mercy to thee is my healing and my succor to both this world and the world to come. Thou art the all-bountiful, the all-knowing, the all-wise.
In every age and time, a holy one appears, bringing love and peace, a messenger of light and life. From all that is revealed, creation long to become a reflection of him, of him. The traveler to Shiraz, searching for the promised one, fulfilling all his hopes. His journey finally comes to an end. He sat before his feet, enchanted by the words, revealing streams of light. The morning sun dissolves the dark of night.
let me tell you a story that describes what it was like to witness the birth of a new revelation through the eyes of Mullah Hussein. The significance of what happened on that evening forever changed the course of history. Let us begin. Mullah Hussein and other students of Sayyid Kazim knew that the Promised One was alive and living amongst them, and that they had to find him. Can you imagine how much faith and determination it took to begin such a quest without knowing where to go or who to look for? To prepare himself, Mullah Hussein spent 40 days in prayer and fasting. He then traveled with 2 companions by land, sea, and over mountains. He was drawn as if by a magnet to the city of Shiraz. They arrived on May 22nd in the year 1844 on a hot afternoon. He sent his companions ahead to find lodging and promised that he would meet them for evening prayers. Mullah Hussein must have been exhausted, hungry, and covered in dust after his long journey. But he didn't go with them. Instead, he stopped. He lingered outside those city gates, almost in expectation. As he walked and pondered, he came face to face with a distinguished young man with a radiant smile. He was wearing a green turban, signifying that he was a descendant of Muhammad. This stranger greeted him as though he were a lifelong friend. Mullah Hussein was impressed with the courtesy, the charisma of this youth. This man, named Sayyid Ali Muhammad, whom I will now refer to as the Báb, invited him to be a guest at his house. Mullah Hussein at first refused, saying that he had promised to meet his companions shortly. This was the Báb's reply: "Commit them to the care of God. He will surely protect and watch over them." Then he told Mullah Hussein to follow him and walked away. What made Mullah Hussein follow him? Naturally, he was moved by the gentle and compelling nature of this youth, but it was also his trust in God. Perhaps, he thought, this visit was meant to be a part of his search, and so he followed. When Mullah Hussein entered that modest home, a feeling of intense joy enveloped him. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it in every fiber of his being. Mullah Hussein needed to wash the stain of travel from his hands and feet. Normally, this was done privately, but the Báb himself insisted on pouring the water over Mullah Hussein's hands. This reminds me of Jesus washing the feet of his disciples at the Last Supper. Next, the Báb offered him a refreshing drink and then prepared the tea and served it himself with extreme love and devotion. Mullah Hussein was sincerely touched by this loving hospitality. The call to prayer was heard. Mullah Hussein rose to his feet and announced that he needed to leave and join his friends as he had promised. He didn't yet realize that the one he had been searching for was right before him. The Báb, in a calm and dignified voice, replied, "You must surely have made the hour of your return conditional upon the will and pleasure of God. It seems that His will has decreed otherwise. You need have no fear of having broken your pledge." Mullah Hussein stopped. He listened. He put his trust in God, and he remained. Then they prayed together, side by side. This was Mullah Hussein's heartfelt prayer. "I have tried with all my soul, O my God, and I have failed to find thy promised messenger. I know that thy word will not fail, and that thy promise is sure." His prayer and his search were about to be rewarded. It was an hour after sunset when the Báb began to gently question his guest about his search for the Promised One, asking him what signs he was given to recognize him. Mullah Hussein replied, "He is a descendant of Muhammad between the ages of 20 to 30, of medium height, abstains from smoking, is physically perfect, and is endowed with innate knowledge." Then there was silence, the pause that comes before the break of dawn. With a vibrant voice, the Báb declared, "Behold, all these signs are manifest in me." He then proceeded to prove that every one of these signs were evident in his person. Mullah Hussein was stunned at this sudden announcement. Did he accept it? No. In fact, he came close to challenging the Báb's claim with these words: "He whose advent we await is a man of unsurpassed holiness, and the cause he is to reveal, a cause of tremendous power. There are many requirements which he who claims to be its visible embodiment must need fulfill." As soon as these words were out of his mouth, he was seized with fear and remorse. What was he doing? If this man was truly the Promised One, was this the way to speak to him? He resolved to soften his tone and speak with humility. All these thoughts and emotions were swirling around in his head when his host again asked, "Observe attentively. Might not the person attended by Sayyid Kazim be none other than I?" This question, so gently posed, encouraged him to continue. He, with his teacher, had devised 2 tests to put to anyone who claimed to be the Promised One. The first was to explain the mysteries in a dissertation that he had written. He humbly presented it to the Báb and asked him to read it. He was astounded by what happened next. The Báb glanced at a few passages, closed it, and within a short time had unraveled all its mysteries and answered all of his questions unasked. Mullah Hussein was dumbfounded. How could he have explained these complex issues so thoroughly after merely glancing at a few pages? Surely, this was proof of innate knowledge. The realization of whose presence he was in was beginning to dawn on him. What came next was an admonition from his host. Had you not been my guest, your position would indeed have been a grievous one. The all-encompassing grace of God has saved you. It is for God to test his servants, and not for his servants to judge him in accordance with their deficient standards. Thus was Mullah Hussein and all of humanity warned. Then the Báb made an announcement that shook Mullah Hussein to the core of his being. Now is the time to reveal the commentary on the Surah of Joseph. You see, Sayyid Kazim had predicted that the Promised One would reveal this unasked, and now it was actually happening. This chapter of the Quran tells the biblical story of Joseph, son of Jacob. If you recall, Joseph's brothers betrayed him and sold him into slavery, but Joseph's ability to interpret dreams resulted in his rise to power in Egypt. The Báb's detailed explanation of this allegory, a story that has a hidden meaning, is highly significant in religious history. The following are Mullah Hussein's words that describe the Báb revealing this commentary.
I sat mesmerized, spellbound, while he took up his pen and with incredible rapidity revealed the first chapter of his commentary. The overpowering effect of the manner in which he wrote was heightened by the gentle intonation of his voice, which accompanied his writing. Not for one moment did he interrupt the flow of the verses which streamed from his pen. Not once did he pause till it was finished. I sat enraptured by the magic of his voice and the sweeping force of his revelation.
At that moment, the clock registered 2 hours and 11 minutes after sunset. In that moment, a new dispensation was born. This night, the Báb declared, this very hour will, in the days to come, be celebrated as one of the greatest and most significant of all festivals. Render thanks to God for having graciously assisted you to attain your heart's desire. He then addressed Mullah Hussein in these words: O thou who art the first to believe in me, verily I say, I am the Báb, the gate of God, and thou art the Baha'u'lláh, the gate of that gate. All night long, Mullah Hussein sat spellbound by his utterances, oblivious of time and those who awaited him. He felt no need for sleep. He sat enthralled by the music of his voice, which rose and fell as he chanted. He stayed in that state until the call to morning prayer suddenly awakened him from this state of ecstasy. Never before in the history of the world's great religions have the exact words of such a momentous event been preserved by an eyewitness. How blessed we are in this day. Let's listen to Mullah Hussein's words describing the effect on his person after witnessing the birth of a new religion.
This revelation, so suddenly and impetuously thrust upon me, came as a thunderbolt, which for a time seemed to have benumbed my faculties. I was blinded by its dazzling splendor and overwhelmed by its crushing force. Excitement, joy, awe, and wonder stirred the depths of my soul. Predominant among these emotions was a sense of gladness and strength, which seemed to have transfigured me. How feeble and impotent, how dejected and timid I had felt previously. Then I could neither write nor walk. So tremulous were my hands and feet. Now, however, the knowledge of his revelation had galvanized my being. I felt possessed of such courage and power that were the world, all its peoples and its potentates, to rise against me, I would, alone and undaunted, withstand their onslaught. The universe seemed but a handful of dust in my grasp. I seemed to be the voice of Gabriel personified, calling unto all mankind, "Awake, for lo, the morning light has broken. Arise, for his cause is made manifest. The portal of his grace is open wide. Enter therein, O peoples of the world. For he who is your promised one is come."
Your words, your life, your sacrifice, the way to heal all wounds. The world has waited oh so long, and you appear the 12th Imam. I heard a verse, your call to me, a cry from deep within. Which way to go? Please tell me now. My heart is waiting nigh. Oh, you came in clouds of self-content. Blind are the eyes that don't see, and you appeared in splendor for all to see. Barely a soul to recognize your light. Now we hear your call, oh promised one. Please help us find our way.
Say God sufficeth, all things above all things, and nothing in the heavens or the earth, but God sufficeth. Verily, He is in Himself the knower, sustainer, the omnipotent.
Friends, I know that you will all want me to extend very warm and very grateful thanks to all of the contributors and participants in tonight's program. The various individuals who have created special dramatic readings, who've created video presentations, have all worked exceedingly hard and with great service and devotion to prepare and contribute to tonight's program, as have the readers. And on behalf of all of us gathered together in the privacy of our homes, we would like to extend a very warm, loving, and grateful thanks to the Holy Day Committee for all they've done during this period of isolation and for their work in preparing tonight's program. To be able to connect heart to heart on a night such as this, which marks the inauguration of a new revelation and the pronouncement of the herald of the Baha'i Faith, to be able to feel so intimately connected is testament to the hard work of the Holy Day Committee, and we extend heartfelt, sincere thanks. And at this point, I would like to draw us back to the very beginning of the program and to points made by Joanne in her dramatic rendering of the story of the Declaration of the Báb, that we are commemorating tonight an exchange that happened between a devout seeker and a manifestation of God. And with this interaction, with this exchange, a divine message was revealed. But in essence, there was a conversation that occurred. And at this time of separation, physical distancing, that is, not separation because we are all connected, but we have recently been enjoined in a letter from the Universal House of Justice to continue our interaction, our exchange and conversation with those of us, with those amongst us with whom we are sharing the message of Baha'u'lláh and the Báb, and this new message which is transforming our world and will transform the future. And so I encourage us all to build on the example of Mullah Hussein and the early believers in the Báb and the early believers of the faith, to take that with us as we continue to engage with our friends and neighbors and family, however physically remote and distanced we may be. Thank you for joining all together tonight. Thank you for letting me say a few words. And now I think our host, our virtual host, will unmute everyone and we can have a little social time together. Good night and happy Holy Day.